Hello and welcome back everybody to the Food Build Factory, where today we're going to take a look at Mc Clintock. That's the guy you can see on screen right now, and as always I'm going to show you some gameplay in the first half of the video, and in the second half of the video we're going to take a look at the perks, mutations, equipment and everything else. So without further ado, let's get right into the character. What this guy is going to be about is we are playing as a Vets full health shotgunner. Pretty straightforward stuff here. What I mean by that is we're not going to take a look at a hybrid build or any fancy stuff like that, but instead the only real thing I did here was use my typical shotgunner formula of getting a lot of crits with 4-leaf clover without a heavy investment into crit related perks, and pretty much just use a anti-armor faster fire rate pump action shotgun, but with the hair trigger receiver. So some of you may not know already, but I am a big fan of hair trigger receivers on a lot of weapons nowadays. Ever since every single damage calculation basically is additive rather than multiplicative, that means you're not missing out on too much damage anymore using hair trigger receivers. Now that doesn't mean that this is all a great thing, because obviously that was a slap. God damn it. This ghoul just slapped the shit out of me. Holy hell. Yeah, back to the topic. Yeah, obviously I would still prefer if everything was multiplicative rather than additive from a fun perspective, but given what we have nowadays, the hair trigger receiver can be a very good choice on certain weapons, especially those that are notoriously slow firing. In the past I have especially used this kind of receiver on certain revolvers, and in addition to that the hunting rifle, which nowadays I barely ever use without it. And this time around, yeah, we're using the pump action shotgun, which in my opinion is pretty much one of those weapons where you get the most benefit from the hair trigger receiver. I recently even saw some kind of Reddit post where certain people asked if they were the only ones that use it, and no, you're not. Not that I expect you to see this, but anyways, I use it a lot, and on this occasion I even went a little bit further and used an anti-armor, faster fire rate, faster reload pump action shotgun, just to really double down on it. And yeah, the result is crazy fun, I'm not gonna lie. In terms of the rest of the character, yeah, it's pretty stock standard. We're relatively tanky, which doesn't seem like it, given we just taken quite a lot of damage, but we are using a bolstering set despite being on a full health character. I often think that bolstering is a pretty good choice. These guys here can actually get on my nerves quite heavily in a few seconds when we're fighting the Scorched Beast, so I rather take them out now. Despite being pretty short, we're going to be followed by one of them. Yeah, back to the bolstering set. I do like it. It gives us more reaction time in a fight where we actually need reaction time in order to use a stim pack and so on. So I'm not going to go too deeply into that, but now, first and foremost, let's get rid of these guys a little bit. Obviously that one was out of range, but with crits and the high fire rate, we can actually use this thing out of range on weaker enemies at least, without worrying too much. Maybe it's not the best decision, but it's actually quite a ammo efficient character. On this occasion maybe use some diluted red X, because we're going to take up quite a few reds here, not having what reds for once. And yeah, another big thing that people seem to miss, which I mean miss is probably the wrong word because it's never really stated. And there it is, first wing gone. Let's care for the other one, which at this point we're not concerned with damage. We just want to hit this guy, and there it is. Now we can actually focus on killing that Scorched Beast, and as you saw there, our magazine is full within no time. Just reloading here. And yeah, that's something people tend to not know about the hair trigger receiver just because it's not stated, which is a little bit of a problem in Fallout 76 overall, that it's very unintuitive at points, given that, yeah, descriptions of certain modifications and so on often don't really tell you what you're actually getting from it. And best example, a lot of people nowadays know that aligned barrels are actually bringing down the action point cost on your weapon, despite it never being said within the description of the modification. And when it comes to the hair trigger receiver, while it says that you have a superior rate of fire, It actually doesn't really mention that you also get faster reload speed, which is a pretty big thing, and especially on a weapon like this where you're going to reload a lot. So on this occasion, focusing on the first guys, and these guys really slap hard, but yeah, maybe we should use a stim pack just so we are not crippled anymore. Man, today we're really getting slapped around by ghouls. The main reason here, by the way, just because it happened again, I'm not using adamantium skeleton for once. I do use ghoulish instead, which is something I wouldn't really advise you to do. I would, if I haven't done like 100 builds prior to that, I would definitely use adamantium skeleton, which makes situations like this we just had way easier. Yeah, just want to keep things fresh a little bit and mix out some perks here and there, so keep in mind you can perform better if you're just using adamantium skeleton, but we're going over that sooner rather than later. And yeah, combining pretty much everything I said so far, what we do have here is a pump action shotgun that has a high rate of fire. You can empty the magazine or whatever it's called on a shotgun, I'm honestly not sure. Maybe we should care about that guy here. Obviously, since a lot of our tankiness, and there we go, pretty much yet again due to not having adamantium skeleton here, due to the fact that a lot of our tankiness here comes from pretty good armor rating. Mr. Gutsies, they can be a pain in the ass because they basically just bypass a lot of your armor, so that's why they are so dangerous overall, but yeah, especially on enemies like this. Not sure what this kind of cult gathering here was supposed to be, but yeah, was working out pretty well for our means, just because that's basically where our weapon shines. A lot of relatively weak enemies and confined spaces. That's basically the best situation you can find yourself in with this build here. I'm just going to step back a little bit in order to deal with the guys we just left behind here, and yeah, you already saw that those guys are a bit of a nemesis for us. To be honest here, fun fact, in pretty much all of my videos, this is the most dangerous part. Usually it's due to the Assaultron, but on this occasion, yeah, actually the Gutsies were the problem. Combination, we have to get close, and as I said, a lot of our survivability just comes from pretty good armor ratings, which don't really help us out a lot against these guys here. The ones with laser rifles aren't too problematic, but yeah, I mean, they go down fast, but as you saw earlier, once they stagger us, that's when we get into trouble. And interestingly enough, we have these guys on the roof here, but they also go down pretty well. Overall, you're actually pretty good against a lot of robots, just because, yeah, robots really go down nicely when you can target their weak spots. Thrusters for the Gutsies, legs for the Assaultrons, and obviously the fusion core for the sentry bot, which is something you can actually do pretty well with this build here, just because yeah, concentrated fire works very well. We don't have a ton of perception, so our initial hit chance isn't too crazy, but since we're using a semi-automatic weapon, essentially, sorry, yeah, that's why ultimately you gain a lot of benefit from concentrated fire, which means that after a few shots you will always, sooner or later, hit your enemy. And whoopsie, these guys were a bit closer than I expected them. Usually they are just up the hill, but yeah, kind of a surprise there, but I think that was on mutual grounds, so they also were surprised to see me, and for some reason we had some rubber banding there, or our hit just didn't really register. But overall, one thing you can see here is the nice thing about the pump action shotgun in this game is you can reload every single shot as you wish, and also you can always just drop out of the reload animation. But on this occasion I actually don't really use that feature all that often, for the simple reason that our reload is so fast that yeah, it oftentimes isn't necessary. So here once again you saw something I mentioned earlier, which is having reaction time. Due to the bolstering armor, it means the lower our health gets, the more armor rating we do get, and that means that killing us it will be slowed down. So if you are getting into a situation where you do have trouble, it actually prolongs your life just enough, so oftentimes you do have time to use a stim pack. And using stimpaks works really well together with shotguns for one simple reason that I never really seen talked about, which is, I will just show it off here. Using a stimpak, you can instantly, the moment your animation for the stimpak started, you can instantly start to shoot your weapon again. Which is not a given, that's not how it works on every single weapon, and for some reason shotguns are the ones where I noticed it the most, rifles being way worse. So it doesn't really have to do that you have to have spin up time or something, it just is a feature of shotguns for some reason. And while that doesn't sound like a whole lot, in close combat situations, when you're using a stimpak in action, that can actually be a situation that decides between life or death in this game, obviously. In real life, if you have to use a stimpak in a gunfight, you're basically done, I guess. I never have been in a gunfight, but I assume at that point I would just, yeah, not be happy overall. So, for some reason, actually, we're going down quite a lot here. Might be that my concentration is a little bit off here, because this is actually the second take already, which is something I always hate, but yeah. Every single time before I do one of these videos, I actually just check if my microphone works. And pretty much always it does work. But once I don't really check it, it obviously doesn't work, and that was one of the cases. So yeah, I was just getting to the part where I have to cut the end and the beginning of the video to where it has to be. I noticed that, yeah, there was no voiceover, and so I had to start off again. So yeah, despite dying twice on this occasion, it's actually not a bad build, just keep my word for it, that was just my mistake. I was approaching the enemies wrong. Like, on this occasion I should have just retreated a little bit more, or just went all in on that guy. On that occasion we had some real nice gunfu action going on, which is, whenever I'm using gunfu, I really want to use this here little walkway to show that off, because you actually have a good chance to proc it. And yeah, we did actually get the full benefit of gunfu on this Deathclaw, and you saw there with a crit, 2 shots and it was down. Now that's not a feat like it was maybe in Fallout 3 or Fallout New Vegas, because Deathclaws are a little bit of a joke in this game, but still they are among the tougher targets, so still a little bit of a feat here, I would say. Just in case, because this guy here, one bite and he probably cripples us again, we want to take him down pretty easily. And one thing I haven't really done, I haven't really shown off so far how fast the fire rate is on this thing, but I think you can get a pretty good glimpse of it just from the gameplay. I mean, I'm obviously having to talk, and at the moment also concentrating on not coughing all the time, just because I'm a little bit sick. But yeah, for you just watching, you probably noticed that. And I have lost track of that guy here, so he was probably up the stairs all the time. Not only probable, like, surely he was up there, but did miss him. And yeah, not a lot left here to say. One thing that's pretty noteworthy about this character here is I have actually, I think it's 3 different instances of where I toned down in terms of effectiveness. Like, I specifically chosen worse options than I could have, just for the sake of visuals. To be more precise, what I'm talking about here, time for a stimpak by the way, what I'm talking about here, the first and probably most impactful one is our barrel option. So the best barrel option when it comes to a VETS shotgunner would be probably the aligned long barrel, and I went with aligned medium for the simple reason that I find that the aligned long barrel just looks a little bit too long. I mean, that sounds a little bit stupid because it should be long, but you get the point here. It just looks a little bit ridiculous. It's not too noticeable in first person, but since I like to play my characters in third person a lot of the time, I actually just preferred the medium barrel, which is a stupid decision in and of itself, just because, yeah, range is one of the biggest problems shotguns have, and the difference between a long and a medium barrel is actually quite noticeable. But yeah, that's what I wanted, so keep that in mind. If you want to perform it a little bit better, you can just go for the long barrel. Then the second thing is I'm actually using a under armor that's not all that great. I'm using shielded military fatigues, which give us extra charisma, intelligence, and a little bit of luck. Basically, none of it is necessary or useful to us. It's just I wanted to have military fatigues. And lastly, the one I'm going to show off now, since we are in sunlight, or at least when we are in sunlight. Yeah, the paint job on the. All right, we have ticks. The paint job on our combat armor, it's actually just the modification, the fiberglass modification, which is about mid-tier. I'm pretty sure it has the same resistance as Shadowed without the benefits of Shadowed, at least somewhere along those lines. So we could actually have quite a few resistance points more by just using Brotherhood of Steel modification, but I wanted to go for this look. I just think it's one of the coolest paint jobs for the combat armor, and yeah, in addition to that we also use a full medium set rather than heavy, so keep that in mind. We could have probably among the realms of 100 to 150 more damage and energy resistance using a heavy combat armor set with Brotherhood of Steel modification. And yeah, that's it, I think. And since yeah, that was a lot of talking. I hope you enjoyed the gameplay part of the video so far, and now we're going to take a look at the mutations and everything. So starting off with them, we do have Adrenal reaction, pretty similar kind of mindset to our bolstering armor set. In a lot of situations we don't really need a damage boost from it, but in pretty much every single fight that gets prolonged for more than like a few shots, we will take some damage and find ourselves somewhere between 60 to 40% health, I would say. So we do get a little bit of a damage benefit from Adrenal reaction, and that's basically why it's there. Then we do have Bird Bones, which just pretty straightforward for a Vets character. Bird Bones and Eagle Eyes give us extra action points, perception, and crit damage, which all basically boil down to better Vets gameplay. More action points to use means we can keep staying in Vets longer. More perception means a little bit better hit chance, and ultimately more crit damage is pretty self-explanatory. Then we do have Egghead, which is another one of those give or take, use or not, as you wish. It doesn't really add anything to our character, it just doubles down a little bit with the intelligence buff from our military fatigues. So since we have a pretty hefty debuff from Marsupial, sorry, I hope that wasn't too loud. Since we have a pretty hefty debuff from Marsupial, and we do have pretty low intelligence to begin with, having a bit of a buff from Egghead and our under armor is nice, I guess. Then we do have Grounded. This was pretty straightforward here. I didn't intend to use any energy guns on this occasion, so the minus damage to energy guns just isn't a factor, so it's basically just 300 energy resistance for us. Then we do have Marsupial and Speed Demon on every single character. I do have those, unless for role-playing reasons maybe, but yeah, just maneuvering Appalachia is way better, using better jump height, faster movement speed, so that's pretty straightforward. And faster reload speed. Okay, excuse me. Faster reload speed obviously syncs in very well with what we are going for here on this character. I mean, we're all about faster reload and faster fire rate. And lastly, we do have Scaly Skin. Pretty much the same mindset as Grounded. We do have a debuff here in terms of less action points, but I found it to be worth it, so keep that in mind. It's give or take, to be honest. I just wanted to have those 50 extra damage and energy resistance, despite them not being necessary, but you will see that with a few perks in a few seconds, where yeah, the sheer fact that I toned down so much on my armor for visuals, I wanted to make up for that by using perks like Evasive and Ironclad, and yeah, ultimately some mutations like Scaly Skin. That being said, I think we can go over to the weapon now. And here we have it, an anti-armor, faster fire rate, faster reload, pump action shotgun. Anti-armor, pretty straightforward, I think. In terms of damage, the best effect when it comes to shotguns, just because yeah, armor penetration is their biggest weakness, and tackling that with the anti-armor effect is a pretty straightforward thing. And yeah, then we do a faster fire rate and faster reload. I talked a lot about that during the video, combined with the hair trigger receiver. Yeah, nothing to add in my eyes. One noteworthy thing here is the condition of this thing is just crazy. I still use the reliable stock rather than an aligned stock, which gives us more condition, which, yeah, in retrospect, probably not necessary. Like, you can easily get away with an aligned stock, I'm pretty sure, but still, yeah, that's what I went with, and not a lot to say otherwise here. I think it works pretty well, and just for reference, we burned through somewhat like 300 shots, 500 shots maybe, at max during the video, which makes this a very ammo efficient way to roam the wasteland in my opinion. And that being said, we can now go over to our armor, and I went with a full set of bolstering. In terms of secondary effects, there's nothing too noteworthy except for one powered piece, which is our chest piece, so that gives us extra action point refresh. We don't really have a lot of perks that tackle the problem of action point refresh, so having one powered piece at least is advised in my eyes. And yeah, in terms of modifications, we do have custom fitted legs for less action point consumption while sprinting, ultralight arms just to give us a little bit of extra action points, and a dense chest piece. Not a lot to say here. And yeah, as I said, shielded military fatigues, extra charisma, intelligence, and a little bit of luck. So that all being said, we can now go over to our perks, and starting off with 14 strength, we do have shotgunner perks maxed out, scatter shot maxed out. This obviously we take for the faster reload speed. 90% less reduced weight on our shotguns is a nice thing to have, but not the thing, yeah, not the craziest thing in the world, but it's nice to have. We are really into the reload speed though. And lastly, we do have Bandolier. Now, this is one of those builds where if you're really dedicated to it and just want to run a shotgunner, I think you can actually get away quite easily without using Bandolier. Yeah, the shotgun shells aren't the lightest ammo in the world, but you don't have to carry too much of it. Like 2,000 rounds, 1,000 rounds will carry you for quite a while, so you can actually get away without using Bandolier without any trouble if you are dedicated to it. Then we do have Perception at 9, we do have Skeet Shooter and Concentrated Fire. These are the mandatory picks in my eyes. Like, Concentrated Fire is very straightforward. We want to pick weak spots of our enemies. And yeah, since we are using essentially a semi-automatic weapon, Concentrated Fire still gets quite a hefty boost at higher ranks to our to our VATS hit chance. So it's definitely worth to go for rank 3 of it. And Skeet Shooter has a benefit to our accuracy, which further improves our VATS hit chance. The reduced spread is actually not something we utilize all that much here, just because as long as you are using VATS, your weapon basically has no spread. You either miss all of your shots or hit with all of them. All of your pellets or hit with all of them. So yeah, we really are just into it for the accuracy boost. And the last one here is one I just thrown in for good measurement. Basically, I wanted to have at least some mediocre perception going on. That's why I wanted to have it at 9 and use glow sight, which is very situational. And you will see later on, we do use a lot of legendary legendary perks. So if you can't keep up with them and just are at a lower level or something, yeah, glow sight, this is one of those that you can just leave out. Yeah, you could easily run this build with 6 perception and just Skeet Shooter and Concentrated Fire, so keep that in mind. However, that being said, in some situations I do like glow sight, and yeah, that's why it's there. Going over to Endurance, which is at 12, so relatively high, but yeah, as I said, we are pretty much always in close quarters situation. We do get a lot of damage, and yeah, as you saw there, despite having quite a lot of investment into our armor rating, and also now you see we do have quite a lot of endurance, we need that. Like, it's not like we could get away with 3 endurance in my eyes. So we do have Life Giver, Ironclad, and Ghoulish here. So first and foremost, Life Giver and Ironclad are 2 perks that a lot of people say aren't worth the investment, which I agree to a point when I say like you have better options, like something you want to use more. But on this occasion, there wasn't actually something I found particularly interesting. I just wanted to have quite a lot of endurance going on, and Ironclad I mentioned earlier. Yeah, since we're already leaving a lot of damage resistance points behind in terms of our equipment, I wanted to use Ironclad, and later you will see Evasive, just to give us a little bit more resistances, so we can get into the realms of diminishing returns. And yeah, that's why Ironclad is here for 50 extra damage and energy resistance, and Life Giver just gives us extra health points, which basically cancels out the debuff from Adrenal reaction. Now, one thing you will see when I'm talking about luck is we actually have quite a lot of debuffs that hurt us all a little bit, but yeah, they're adding up. So you have actually room, you do actually have room to use Class Freak in this build, but I will go over that. And lastly, we do have Ghoulish, and yet again, this I mentioned during the gameplay part of the video. Usually I would advise you to just use Adamantium Skeleton here, but just to mix things up a little bit, I wanted to went with Ghoulish. Wanted to go with Ghoulish. Ultimately, I think you can pretty well imagine the performance with Adamantium Skeleton rather than Ghoulish here. And yeah, just for future reference in other builds, I can say like, yeah, look at that build. Look at Mc Clintock. There you can see why Adamantium Skeleton might be a good choice. Now talking about Ghoulish, actually, why that might be a good choice. I think you saw that during the part where we were fighting the Scorch Beast. So whenever you are in an area that is mildly irradiated, I would say, like basically around fissure sites is a perfect example. You just have to worry about using a red away every now and then and thinking about a red X, diluted red X in the beginning, and at that point you just don't have to worry too much about your health anymore. So the healing you're getting is actually quite good. It's just pretty situational. Yet again, to Glow Sight, good comparison there. It's a pretty situational perk, but in situation where it works, it actually works very well. Then we go over to Charisma. This is one of the more interesting choices, I guess, and yeah, I just went with rank 1 of Tenderizer. So for those of you who have seen Tier's video, which is at this point half a year old or so, where he basically breaks down how Tenderizer works, you can get up to 40% multiplicative damage with it, depending on how many hits you actually get at the single time on an enemy. And yeah, basically the way it works is, yeah, every single time you hit an enemy, you get the damage bonus from Tenderizer up to 40%. And what that means is, with shotguns, rank 1 of Tenderizer is enough if you're using them in VATS and every single pellet hits, to get 40% multiplicative damage on the second shot, which is very nice. And that also means if you're using VATS, everything further than rank 1 of Tenderizer is basically wasted on shotgunners. So there's an interesting information here. Guess a lot of you know already, but maybe someone didn't. Then we go over to Intelligence. I already called it out earlier. It's pretty low at only 3. I use it for first aid, and you saw that during the video. We are actually using Stimpaks quite often. It's just a daily routine during fights. Now, I didn't really find that to be particularly problematic, because yeah, Stimpaks are really abundant in Fallout 76, so it's not hard to keep a good stack of them. But also, it's not like you're swimming in them unless you are actually pretty tanky, pretty stealthy. So the moment you are running a character where you're using them on a consistent basis, investing into making them more effective is actually a good way to balance it out, so you're not running out of them. And yeah, that's basically it. Then we go over to Agility, which is basically our only stat that is completely maxed out, and in fact even further than that. We do have Legendary Agility, which we will see in a moment. So yeah, we use it for Action Boy. This is, except for the powered armor piece that we do have, the only real investment we have into refreshing our action points a bit faster. Now, in a lot of situations, Grim Reaper Sprint is enough to basically let us keep firing in VATS for quite a sufficient amount of time, but every now and then we will run out of action points, and yeah, basically with Action Boy and one powered piece, that means by the time we have reloaded, we oftentimes are back to like half or even more of that of our action points, and can start firing again, basically. Sorry. Then we do have rank 1 of Enforcer. This is a pretty similar mindset than with Tenderizer. Enforcer is working so well that on a lot of shotgunners I still use Enforcer at rank 3, and I would also say it's better than using it at rank 1. But since we have the chance to actually put a lot of bullets down our barrel, not bullets, what are they called? Gorges? Buckshots? No. I'm really not a gun person, sorry, I grew up and live in Germany, so excuse me for that. Anyways, we can use a lot of shots and a lot of follow-up shots, so even if we use more than one hit to cripple an enemy, it's not a problem. But still, Enforcer is just so good on shotguns, and in fact only on shotguns, that rank 1 of it is enough to cripple our enemies easily. You saw that with the Scorch Beast. Now on the first wing, I think it was the first one, we actually needed quite a few shots to cripple the wing, but the problem wasn't that Enforcer didn't work, it was just we weren't hitting the wing to begin with. But the moment we hit it, it took us 1 or 2 shots to cripple it. It really still is very effective. Then we do have Evasive, not a lot to say here other than everything I said about Ironclad. Then we do have Gun Fu at rank 3. Now this is definitely not something that happens all of the time, or you can get use out of all of the time, but if it happens, it's very nice. So yeah, I pretty much called it out when we were fighting the Deathclaw. Worked perfectly, and I do still to this day have a feeling that the Gun Fu is actually multiplicative, one of the multiplicative perks. I never really looked into it too much, but it seems very efficient. Anyways, it's just fun and works very well together with this character. And lastly, we do have Adrenaline. Now this is a very unsurprising pick, it's pretty much always there. It's basically the marsupial mutation of perks combined with Tenderizer. And yeah, in a lot of situations we just get 60 extra damage, sorry, 60% additive extra damage, which isn't a whole lot. It's yet again quite a lot of perk point investment, but on this occasion it's not even controversial in any means, because we wanted to have agility maxed out, or at least very high, just so we can stay in VATS a lot of time, and there's not a ton of different options we could have gone for. Like, don't get me wrong, there are ones, but nothing desperately necessary. Like, we could have used Marathoner, for example, or White Knight, but yeah, on this occasion I went with Adrenaline, and I'm pretty happy with it. And lastly, we do have Luck at 14. So we do have Grim Reaper Sprint, Better Criticals, and Four Leaf Clover. That's the 3 perks that I use in order to cover pretty much all of my VATS needs here. Grim Reaper Sprint, I touched upon it earlier, it just helps us stay in VATS for longer and works pretty well. The only real VATS builds where I don't use it, which is very rare, is when I just go all in on Action Point Refresh, but that's rather rare. On pretty much every other VATS character I actually like to use Grim Reaper Sprint. It's just a very convenient perk to have. Better Criticals is pretty straightforward. I mean, if you're investing into, or if you're using VATS a lot of the time and trying to get a lot of crits, you might as well increase your damage with them, right? And lastly, Four Leaf Clover. Now, I have explained this in more detail in a lot of my shotgunner videos, but it's basically my go-to perk when it comes to shotgunners, unless I, for some unholy reason, use them outside of VATS. Yeah, it just works very well, like, similar to Enforcer. The amount of hits that you do have just mean that every time you do hit an enemy, you get this excellent chance to refill your critical meter, and you're actually hitting an enemy 8 times at once every time you do hit him. So this chance is really, really good. Now, it's not comparable to a 33 luck character or critical savvy 23 luck and faster VATS crits legendary effect character, where you get a a crit on every second shot, period. Every third one, sorry, like, you get the point. But it is very reliable. Like, it really often refills your critical meter on the first hit, and yeah, if it doesn't, at least on the second hit or so, you get the point. It just works very well, and didn't feel like investing a whole lot more into vets was necessary on this occasion. Then we do have Starch Genes, because of course we do. We want to keep our mutations and not get any new ones, we just can't get around that. And lastly, we do have Quick Hands. Now this is the point where I said earlier, we do have room for Class Freak in this build, and it's actually one of those builds where, I mean oftentimes I like to live with the debuffs from my mutations. I know a lot of people just would never run any build without Class Freak. I just don't do that. Every now and then I do so, especially on melee builds. And this would be one of those builds where I was actually very tempted to use Class Freak, just because in and of itself there's not a single debuff that's actually crazy or really crippling to us, but they kind of sum up a little bit. You get the point, like a little bit of less health here, a little bit less action points there, and it really just sums up a little bit, just to the point where I say I can easily live without Class Freak, but it would be a good benefit. However, I went with Quick Hands here, and I'm not a big fan of Quick Hands unless on stuff like maybe the double barrel shotgun, like the extreme examples where it's actually really useful and reliable. On this occasion though, I found myself emptying the weapon pretty consistently. Oftentimes I go for tactical reloads on a lot of weapons, especially on rifles and so on, where I basically never really empty my magazine. And therefore never really have the chance to use Quick Hands. On this occasion though, I really often fired to the last shot, and therefore had a lot of chances to actually get Quick Hands to proc. And the reason it's still here is, despite not happening all that often, is on this occasion it's very satisfying when it happens. Especially if you are in first person, you shoot a tougher target, for example a Scorch Beast or Sheep Squatch, and you get Quick Hands to proc. It actually feels like you're shooting for ages, despite it just being double clip size or magazine size or whatever, basically. Yeah, it just feels way more. It's hard to explain, but I really liked it, and it doubles down very well with the whole theme of the character. So that's why I wanted to leave it in here. But keep in mind, there's more effective options, and most certainly Class Freak would be the better option here. I just still like to have Quick Hands here, just because it felt rather fitting with the character. And that all being said, we're now going to take a look at our legendary perks, and they are not all that interesting, to be honest. We have a lot of legendary stats. Legendary strength, endurance, luck and perception. These all are here to give us access to use more perk points. And the only exception here is legendary agility. I already said that earlier. This boosts our agility from 15 up to 18, just so we can get a little bit more action points going on. But the rest here is used for extra perk points. And yeah, that's pretty much it. And the last choice here is, yet again, not the most sensible one probably, but I went with Funky Dots. I mean, first threshold for using Funky Dots is it actually works here, just because we do have a matching set of armor. But yeah, I felt it worked pretty well together yet again with the character wearing this gas mask and being kind of this trench warfare kind of character. And yeah, in addition to that, we get a majority of our survivability with this build from resistances. So having poison resistance in addition to that is nice to have. Now, I choose Funky Dots because this is actually the kind of damage we encounter relatively often, compared to, let's say, fire damage, which is very rare. Funky Dots, like poison damage, can really be frustrating. Fighting is a Mylar Queen or a Mylar King. Yeah, poison damage is no joke, and 100 poison damage resistance makes it so even those enemies are not too crazy. And yeah, I'm really missing Water Rats, I'm gonna be honest here, but on the other side, yeah, similar to what I said earlier, just to keep things a little bit fresh and mix things up a little bit here. I mean, after 120 builds or so that we have on the channel, we're bound to repeat some stuff, but not everything. And yeah, that all being said, we're not going to change our appearance. We actually want to look at our thumbnail here. With that all being said, I hope you enjoyed the build, guys, and yeah, see you next time. Bye.